I've got a Retina IIIc here, 3 small C, dual range meter, the one with the metal flap on it. If your camera has the black plastic frame and no flap, this is not for you. I'm going to show you how to deal with the rangefinder, to remove it and clean it and do the job without getting into too much trouble. So first off, we need to remove the top of the camera, and I usually start that by removing the rewind knob. Put something through the fork of the rewind knob, a screwdriver, end of a pair of tweezers, something like that. This should just unscrew with your fingers, lift it off. Here's the collar, don't lose the collar. This one's got a little washer on it, right there. Don't lose the washer if it's present. It won't always be there. That's used to make sure that the rest position of the rewind knob is slightly above the top cover so that it doesn't scuff on it as it revolves when you're winding the film on. So, what have we got for screws? One screw at the end of the top housing. Do not disturb the meter dial, it doesn't need to come off. Two screws on the top plate by the rewind. These are chrome plated brass, easily damaged. Don't scratch them, use decent screwdrivers, use some care. Lift the top cover off carefully, do not pull out the shutter release. Actually, you probably can't do that easily on this model because the meter keeps it in place. But do not ever remove the shutter release from the camera like this. You'll end up in a lot of trouble. So we've got the top cover off, and now we need to do is remove the meter. The meter is held in with 2 screws here and here. If I can just get my screwdriver to pick up the slot. Drop those screws out, put them to one side. Here we have our rangefinder. The camera can be put carefully to one side, you won't be needing that for a while. You zoom in a little bit here. Alright, let's have a quick look at the rangefinder. This one's a little bit hazy. Bit of filth on the back of that eyepiece in particular. Prism doesn't look particularly bad, certainly you could do with a clean. So the easy bits. If you didn't want to venture into this too deep, what would you do? Well, obviously you clean the exterior surfaces, the rear of the glass at the eyepiece side, the front glass here, the 2 prism faces. That's minimally invasive. That'll probably get rid of possibly 20-25% of your trouble. If these are obscured with greasy fingerprints and things, it might easily get rid of much more of your trouble. So let's start, assuming you're going to dig in deeper and look for trouble. Let's see how we go. So we can remove these 2 screws at this end and remove the prism. They shouldn't be particularly tight. Put those screws to one side. The prism just pulls out of the end. There are 3 faces of the prism to be cleaned. The 2 external faces, the 1 internal face down in that hole. They're just done with cotton buds and a bit of glass cleaner. The rear glass here. the eyepiece. Held in with a single screw. Lift off the screw and the cover. There's the glass. Now, if you're not wanting to get in very deep into this cleaning process, you might want to clean the internal surface of this. If it shows a lot of muck and the rest of it looks relatively clean, you can clean that and pop it back. This lens is plano-convex. In other words, it's flat on one side and it's convex on the other. The convex side goes in, the flat side goes out. Keep that in mind. Here we've got the moving arm. This is the piece that shifts as you adjust the focus. That's the piece that is often stiff. It might be sticky with grease, it might pull out with the focus as you adjust to a close focus position, and it might fail to return under spring tension because it's sticky. We need to mark this so it goes back in the right place. And I say that because the point this screws to can shift up and down the body, and it needs to go back in the right place or you have a hell of a job aligning your images afterwards. So I normally scribe a line with the tip of a screwdriver around the outside edge there so that I can see where this arm needs to go back on. We can lift this little pin here, just holds the end of the spring. If we lift that out against the spring, we can lift that pin out completely. It's just a simple pin with a groove around the inside for the spring to sit in. Don't let it go pinging across the room, you won't like it. Okay, so that pinhead screw, how are we going to attack that? Well, there's three reasonable options here that I use from time to time. One is just to use a set of robust tweezers. The second is to use this. This is a pair of circlip pliers that have had the tips ground, filed away till they're nice and pointy. That can be used for turning things like this. And the third tool I have is this one. This one from Belgian, USA. It has two little pieces of metal sticking out here, two pins. One of them is fixed at the end, and you can adjust the position of the other one by winding the knob backwards or forwards. And this just acts as a spanner. The pins just drop into these holes, and then you can twist it and break it loose. Once it's loose, it's easier to twist it out with the pliers. So any of those tools would likely do the job. This is probably the easiest cheap answer, which gives you the ability to do all sorts of pinhead screws. Let's try this one today. So all I had to do was break that loose, which takes almost no force at all with a tool like that, and I can use my tweezers to unscrew the rest of it, and that screw should just lift off. We can lift the arm out now. Now, the piece that this screwed into is a little piece of metal there that slides in a slot, a threaded piece. It's going to knock that loose and tip it out. I don't want it rattling around the glass surfaces and damaging them. So I made a point of tipping it out this opening here. That part's done. Let's have a quick look at the arm. What have we got on the arm here? Well, we've got a wavy washer. If that's absolutely dead flat, you can end up with a problem where the rangefinder won't hold its vertical alignment. Sometimes it's perfect. You pick the camera up next time and one image or the other is drifted high or low. On the arm at this point, you can see this brass bush. It's split Now, I don't know that these are really eccentric, but they certainly can sometimes appear to be a little bit eccentric. So I normally make a scratch across from that cut, make a scratch on the body so I can put it back in the right place, and I put a wee scratch on that brass bush so I know which way's up. We can pop that bush out, that can all be cleaned. And that brings us down to the body of the rangefinder, and there's still more pieces to come out. Now this piece here, the semi-silvered mirror, don't remove it. Leave it intact. I usually clean that in the ultrasonic cleaner. I usually don't touch the surfaces there. We will go into that in a second. So I normally remove this screw. And that holds the glass in here. And I remove the piece in here. There's a little spring clip. The spring clip retains the glass and the mask at this point. So I slide that spring clip out, pop it to one side. This is the one in the middle. And there we have our silvered frame and the black mask. Well, the black mask can be put to one side. The silvered frame, you'll notice, is silvered on one side only. The side with the silvering on faces forward. There are two of these silvered frames to be found in the rangefinder. The larger one goes in the middle position here. So now we're left with getting to the front components. And they're a bit more entertaining to get out. So like that middle mask and glass, they're held in with a similar sort of spring clip. In fact, it's virtually identical. Sometimes it's got a bit more tension to it. So I'm just going to get in with my tweezers. I've got some curved tweezers there. Hook under that spring clip and lift it out. Our front component here. What have we got? Well, this is 4 pieces. We've got a mask on the front, a celluloid mask, like a piece of film with frame lines on it. Behind that we've got our main glass lens component. Behind that we have a little metal frame mask, and at the back of that we have some silvered frame lines on a piece of glass. Now this doesn't come out easily. It has to be, it's cemented in with a touch of lacquer at top and bottom. And the glass is fairly delicate, particularly the mirrored piece like this. It's easily broken. If you break them, of course, you're going to be hunting around for another camera to find spares. So I'll show you how I go about doing this. Okay, well I've got the rangefinder here and I'm ready to remove these front components for cleaning. So I need acetone. Acetone's what you need. And we have to apply a couple of drops of acetone to melt the cement or the lacquer right on that slot there. Just put a little drop in. I'm just picking that up with my tweezers. The same on the other side. And I'm just checking to see if it has softened the lacquer by catching my fingernail on this little tab on the end of the mask here. Just flicking it towards the back gently to see if it'll break that rear glass loose. It's not doing so, so a bit more acetone probably is the answer. Depends how much acetone, lacquer was used to seal the glass in here when the thing was assembled. You only need a touch, and it's to stop these components moving from side to side at a later date, because if they move from side to side, the alignment of your split image finder, the alignment of your rangefinder won't be right. Okay, that did it. I just pushed against that tab with my fingernail, and it's pushed the glass and the mask back out of place. I can slide that rear glass out, that mirrored piece. I can slide the metal mask out. That piece in particular is the most delicate, it's easily damaged. I'm applying some gentle pressure to that glass and mask at the front, and it just dropped back out of the way. I can slide those out. So I separate those components. Now those components are nicely contaminated with the lacquer that was used to hold it all together, and we've got to get that off the surfaces before we do anything else. So normally I start with the front glass component, and I'm using some acetone on a cotton bud here. And I'm swabbing all the surfaces carefully, particularly the top and bottom edge, which were originally lacquered into place, or at least had a touch of lacquer on them. I'll do this multiple times until I'm happy that that glass is clean and doesn't show any smears from the remains of the lacquer. If it does, that lacquer won't come off with anything. It won't come off with glass cleaner or things of that nature. It's got to be pretty much removed with acetone. I'm just checking this against the light, checking reflections, looking through it. That piece is good. Our little celluloid mask here, that will not be damaged by the acetone. So I've wiped that. Particularly interested in cleaning the front surface, because that's the one you can see from outside of the camera. The shiny dark surface is the surface that goes inwards. Just checking that looks clean. That only goes in one way. You don't want to mess it up. Be a bit more gentle about cleaning the lacquer off this part. It's a painted part. You wipe it too long and too wet with your acetone, you will certainly strip the paint. You don't want to do that. That brings us back to our little glass mask with the silver line on it, silver line, frame lines. And I'm going to do the same to this, both sides of the glass. Again, I'm using acetone, I'm not using anything else. And I'm checking to make sure that I have the glass surfaces are clean. It's a bit cloudy looking. Be aware there may be other contaminants on here, there probably are. Oily haze, something like that. I'm checking the surface to see how good it is. I want that as good as I can reasonably get it. That looks fine. Now I've got my components almost ready to go into the ultrasonic cleaner. First off, I remove any grease marks here from where the arm's been running. I don't want that contaminating the solution in the cleaner. And I clean my two silvered frame line pieces in place in the rangefinder body at the same time as I clean the semi-silvered mirror that's in here. The semi-silvered mirror has two surfaces. we're not taking it out of here so we can't get it mixed up. The front surface is just glass. You could clean that with a cotton bud, no problem at all. The rear surface is the semi-silvered surface. That surface is very delicate. You touch that with a cotton bud, there's a very good chance you'll remove the silvering that's on there and then it won't work. So just don't do it. That's the best advice I can give you. Right, so our two silvered frame pieces. As I said, the silvered frames are on one surface of the glass, and you can tell when you look closely at it which surface it is. So for the middle one that goes in the middle slot there, the surface with the silver on points to the front. This is the larger of the two frames. That slides in there. The smaller of the two frames, the surface with the silver on it, I can just see a hint of fingerprint on there and it's not mine. That goes to the inside, goes to the back when we're putting it into the front position. So those glasses are slid into place. I'll put the metal keeper back in place, run the screw down. Those parts can't fall out now. They're trapped in there, they rattle about, that's okay, but they can't fall out and they can't get damaged. A note about this piece at the back. On the back of the rear of the semi-silvered mirror, there's a tiny metal piece here, a little black piece. Now that's job, it supports the edge of this rear lens, or helps locate it, one or both. That's loose, it's only held in with a drop of lacquer. This may fall out in the cleaning process, it's not a terrible job to put it back. I should deal with that if we have to. Okay, so that part's all ready to go into the ultrasonic cleaner now, so I'll show you that part. Okay, for cleaning the rangefinder, I use this ultrasonic cleaner. In the interests of not having to fill up the bath too much, because there's an awful lot of space in here, what I normally do is fill the container with just warm water, and in the glass I put a few drops of dishwash detergent, and that just nestles in there in the water, and the ultrasonic waves just transmit through the glass and do the cleaning inside there. So that's the easiest way to do it. It requires least waste of detergent and hot water, and it's just fairly convenient. Often my ultrasonic cleaner of the tank is often a little bit greasy from having used it to clean mechanical parts from cameras, so it wouldn't be a great thing to be doing the glass inside there anyway. So I'll move on to that. Alright, a couple of drops of dishwash detergent. Drop in the rangefinder. Plug in the power. Dial this down to 3 minutes, sorry about the loud beep. Start the cleaner. Come back in 3 minutes. And okay, the 3 minutes is up, and I can move on to the next stage. So basically, I need to fish the rangefinder out of my water. I'm just checking to see if that little mask has slipped off the back glass. It's thinking seriously about it. I'm going to rinse this. And since I know that glass is a bit loose, I won't do it under running water. Well, I'll do it under running water, but I'll be doing it in the glass, so that if that little mask falls off, It won't go down the sink. So there we have it. There's our rangefinder, all cleaned. I'll blow off all the excess moisture, and now to the next stage. And here you need to be doing this job while your wife is out of the house, because the next part of the job is to dry off the rangefinder. And the tool for the job is your wife's hairdryer. So I'll get this on hyper thrust. What I'm doing there is making sure I blow off any droplets of moisture, otherwise they'll leave rings, like coffee rings, when they dry. As you can probably see there, that mask is just hanging on by a tiny thread of lacquer or glue. It's certainly trying to make an escape. It didn't succeed. We can finish that job on the bench now. Need to reassemble the rangefinder now. Let's just see if I can turn that round so I can see what's happening on the camera. That's good. So, our first task is to get this little mask, this little piece here, back into position. Now that sits, the semi-silvered mirror sort of sits in a little bracket. It acts like a tray that holds it in place. And this little bracket just slips down in between the end, folded over end of that tray and that semi-silvered mirror. So I've just got to get that back into place. So I'll detach it from where it's hanging on by a thread of glue. Pop it into position. That's it. That'll be held in place by the rear lens. There's no danger of that falling out. That's just sitting exactly where it needs to be. So I'll start with the rear lens or the eyepiece, because that's the piece that'll hold everything together and save us having any more grief. So what do I need? Glass cleaner. Alright, with a tiny drop of glass cleaner on the end of the cotton bud, I'll clean this rear lens, this rear piece of glass. I'm cleaning the convex surface first. That's nice and clean. I'll drop that into place. That sits down into the recess. I'll clean the outside surface now. And the way I've done it like this, instead of trying to clean both sides at once, is that inevitably when you turn it over you'll end up getting dust on the underside, and then it'll be a nuisance. The cover fits over the back. That piece of glass was convex side in, flat side out. Just checking, looking at that, making sure it looks good. I'm checking the surfaces of the glass. those 3 pieces of glass, making sure that there's nothing on them that I want to remove at this stage. And that all looks good. So I can take this side cover off, this little bracket that holds the glass in. I'll deal with the middle piece of mirrored glass first, the one with the frame lines on. This goes behind the glass towards the eyepiece. That's the middle one. Here's our retainer. That one's in place. The next piece of glass to deal with is the main front piece of glass. And I've already cleaned this, I'm just checking it to see what it looks like. It looks good. Lay that face down. The frame goes over it, the black mask frame that clips over the end of it. Like that on the inside surface. This should slide in front of our front mirror, frame line mirror glass. And that leaves us with this piece. This is the mask from the outside with the frame lines on it. Now, this goes in one way, the dull grey side to the outside. And when you look at this, you'll see that there are tiny marks in the corner of the frame. On one of the long sides there's 1 mark, on the other long side there are 2 marks. The long side with the 2 marks goes to the top of the rangefinder. This should just slide in front of that front glass, like that. Our retainer spring slides in behind the mirrored frame line piece, like that. That's all assembled. You can put that little retainer back in place, run the screw down, that's the main part of the rangefinder clean, the viewfinder part if you like of it. I'm just going to check out the window and see if that looks clean and it's to my satisfaction and that the frame lines appear where they should. That looks good to me. Okay, so that part of the job is done.